special project that has been going on for the past 2 years at Hingham High School. I call it the Tennoji Project or the Tennoji Experience, but it involves a relationship that has evolved between our high school and a high school in Japan. And so my guests will be in 2 segments. With me here right now, Rick Swanson, and Rick is one of the assistant principals at Hingham High School and also a baseball coach, JV baseball coach. Next to Rick is Kara Roth. Kara is an English teacher at Hingham High School, and as well, Kara coordinates the global services, global studies program, which is a wonderful offering that we have for kids at Hingham High School. And next to Kara is Frank Niles. Frank is a local businessman, but also, more importantly for this segment, Frank is the varsity baseball coach at Hingham High School. So welcome, yes. So I'm going to ask Rick and Kara, and we'll start with Rick, to give us some background about how this project all came about. And the first time that you met with the Tennoji students from Japan was spring of 2014. But a lot of work went on before that. So tell us how this project all got started. Where did the idea come from, and how did it get started?
Sure. Thanks, Dot. Very, I think, unlikely story, but wonderful story. Maybe a project that was somehow fated or meant to be. It started a couple of years ago when Ms. Roth and I were in her classroom with several students who are members of our Global Citizenship Program. All of us had watched a PBS documentary called Kokoyaku. Terrific film about high school baseball in Japan that had been made by a couple of local filmmakers, some Boston guys who had done this film. Aired nationwide on PBS back in 2006. And we had a chance to interact with those filmmakers and send them questions about this fascinating film. And during the course of our conversation with them, one of the filmmakers had mentioned the fact that a coach who's profiled in that documentary, coach at Tennoji High School in Osaka, Japan, had long held this dream of coming to the United States with his team. And it immediately occurred to me that we'd be the perfect place for them to come. And they had, I guess, tried to do it one time and the project hadn't worked out, but I contacted the filmmaker the next day and said, "Is this coach, his name is Hideshi Masa, known to us as Masa Sensei, did he still want to come to the United States? And if so, we should explore the possibility of bringing them to Hingham." And so he made a call, I think, the next day, and within a couple of weeks, we realized this is a real possibility. And it all came together over the course of then the next several months until in March of 2014, Masa Sensei, along with about 35 of his players, came and spent a week with us here in Hingham. All those players stayed with host families at Hingham High School. They visited, they went to classes, and we took them on a bunch of field trips, and they practiced baseball every day. They scrimmaged with us at the end of the week. And a great foundation was built for an ongoing friendship that I hope will continue many years into the future.
Okay. So, Kara, would you tell us some of the activities that went on during that week? Because March is early for us for baseball.
Right.
A little cold. Fortunately, it was spring of 14 and not spring of 15.
Right.
But what were some of the things that the students from Japan did, and our kids, while they were here?
We had such a lovely array of types of activities. It started, of course, with a welcome reception when they pulled in on the bus from Logan Airport, and the parents and the host families put together a lovely reception for them, and you could just tell right away it was going to be a really powerful week. So from kind of very personal events like that to even broader events, one of the highlights for a lot of people I know was visiting Fenway Park. Early in the season, everyone was bundled up, but we got a dual language tour of Fenway Park in Japanese and one in English, and we had the rare chance to go walk on the dirt, and they got to set foot on the turf at Fenway, and I know a lot of kids, American and Japanese, thought that was a highlight of their lives. And then, in addition to the baseball practices, which were so meaningful in a lot of ways, there were so many other informal events too. Pizza parties. I remember, just a pizza party, and it was a video dance competition in the cafeteria at the high school. And even though there were some language barriers, things like video games brought the kids together. And and they're just really lots of warm smiles and things like that. I mean, lots of outings to Wahlburgers, a outing to, all teenagers love shopping at Derby Street, right? So just those types of things were very universal and bonding for
And
the kids.
a lot of community support, it sounds like.
Yeah,
to
a great
make
deal
all
of
those
community
special
support.
things
There,
happen.
and of course, that was one of the highlights, was that there were so many parents, from running carpools to obviously hosting them in their homes. Local businesses came through with so many donations. Wahlburgers did, EF Tours did, Hingham Savings was very supportive of the whole endeavor. So from really casual encounters to formal tours, including things like the Freedom Trail. I went to a Celtics game, and that was great. The Celtics were so generous to donate many, many tickets to the group. I feel like we were so lucky to have so many people come together to put a wide array of types of activities for the kids. So they got a taste of the Boston area, and of the very local Hingham area as well.
And you had a culminating event on the Friday night of that week. And
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to be there. It was very emotional and a lot of ceremony and a number of speeches. But I was particularly struck by this coach that you've described, and obviously very, very well respected by everyone, our kids and theirs, and seemed like a real legend. So Frank, you probably had more interactions with him and perhaps others, so tell me about
the
that.
first time around,
And you don't speak Japanese,
not a
I'm
bit.
assuming, and he doesn't speak English, I
Not a bit.
understand. Okay,
We were the
so,
least able to communicate. But you could tell right away he was a very dedicated, passionate baseball guy. The first time when they visited here, I didn't get to interact with him that much because we were in preseason baseball mode. If you remember, Rick, I was kind of more of a lunatic at that time because you're trying to prepare for the season, and all of a sudden we have this Japanese team that we're supposed to entertain or do baseball with, and we couldn't even get out on our field yet. But we worked out indoors and then tried to get outdoors and practice with them some on the turf, but he was high energy, full of life, hugging kids in the middle of practice if they made a good play, and he was really something. You could see that.
yeah,
So the second time when we went there, I got to know him much better, bond with him a lot of different ways, and I feel like I know him now.
that's great, that's great. So out of that experience, which was wonderful in itself, there then became a next phase. So how did that, what I think you probably thought was a one-time experience, evolve into the trip that happened this summer?
I think we realized from the start we were making it up as we went along. And one of the filmmakers, I think, had said to me at one point, Rick, the universe wants this to happen, so it's going to happen.
The universe.
Right. And it felt that way, I think, throughout that first week. And by the end of that week, Masa Sensei had indicated to us that he wanted us to come to Japan. And so that kind of informal invitation that he had given while he was here soon turned into a formal invitation from the school. On behalf of the whole school, the coach and their principal as well had invited us to come to Japan. And we knew we wanted to go. There had been so much enthusiasm among our baseball players, among the school community as a whole, even among the Hingham community, the broader community, that had really responded to this. And I'll never forget the crowd at Cronin Field the day we played the scrimmage. I had never seen a crowd remotely as large as the crowd that came out, even on a drizzly, cold, late March day, to see that game.
I was watching from my office.
You were. You
from
had
the window.
maybe the best seat in town for that game.
And we should say that this exchange and that game practice was all cleared with MIAA. So
Yes,
there's no
all above
violation
board.
of-
No, right. We're very grateful to the MIA and Bill Gain, who approved the visit there this past summer too, because of course we were playing after the regular season had ended, which typically is not permitted. But we were granted an exemption to practice with them one time and to play the scrimmage with them one day while we were there this summer. And so we I guess about a little over a year ago, we started the plans for going there, and Kara was very successful in writing a grant that was funded by the U.S.-Japan Foundation that helped to get us started. Traveling to Japan is enormously expensive. It's one of the most expensive countries to travel to in the whole world. Airfare alone was going to cost about $2,000 per student. And then all the other things that we hoped to do while we were there made this a very costly trip. But we were lucky enough to be supported not just by that foundation, but by lots of local businesses and individuals as well. And when we put the trip out to the student body, there was tremendous response to it, not just from baseball players, but from others as well. We knew we wanted it to not be a baseball-only trip, just as their trip here, although baseball may have been the genesis of it, all became something much larger. So we wanted anybody at Hingham High School who really wanted to go to have that opportunity. And we knew we could bring as many as 40 students, and that's how many we wound up taking this summer.
Frank, at any point in all of this, did you say, whose crazy idea is this?
I sure did. Yeah. You know, at first when it was put out there, we're going to go to Japan with the team. Can you go? Can you do it? And we kicked around some possibilities and some dates. Yeah, I thought, this is nuts. This will be extremely difficult. Will the players really be able to go and raise the money? They play summer baseball, so that had to be over. I run a business that keeps me very busy. I needed to have time away from that. But then in a bigger picture, I said to myself, well, I go to Japan for baseball and high
Once in a
school
lifetime
kids. I said,
kind of
I have to do this.
Yeah.
It was a no-brainer, and my family, my wife agreed, which matters.
That's
And-
important.
Yes. And so then it was, in discussion, we get to a certain point, and I said, yes, Rick, well, I'm going. If this happens, I'm all in. And it was much better than I ever thought it could be, really.
And of course, Hingham High School has lots of trips abroad for kids. Typically, though, they go to countries where English is a major language. I'm not so sure that's true of the area where you went in Japan, but have you ever chaperoned one of those trips before, Kara?
I have, yes. I've luckily, there's a lot of support and interest in global travel and global education in the community. I teach Irish literature. I've taken students to Ireland. Actually, Rick and I have taken kids on a service trip recently to the Dominican Republic. And I think you're right, Dot, in that the students typically will go on a trip either to an English-speaking country or a country with a foreign language that they're studying in school, a Spanish-speaking country or Chinese, France. But this, I think, was unique in that we don't offer Japanese. It's very difficult to do, I'm sure. And so most of us were fish out of water to a certain extent, and that was an exciting challenge that people rose to in a lot of interesting ways. Yeah, but it was definitely a unique. The most unique international trip I've led.
You've done, yeah. So we're going to hear in a few minutes in the next segment from some students about the highlights for them. Rick, you probably had expectations of what this would be like when you got there. And can you tell us one or two things that were really so different from what you had expected?
I think I went in expecting to be surprised, and you wake up every morning there expecting to see things that you've never seen before, and meet people who you've never met, and encounter things that are so far removed from our ordinary life here in the United States. And it is true, every moment was chock full of it. I think even now, having been back here for a couple of months, I could retrace every single one of those 10 days, and they stand out so vividly because the experiences were so unique. It'd be hard to even just pick a couple of highlights, but certainly the baseball experience for me was very moving, to be out in the baseball field with our players and their players, and competing alongside one another and communicating without language. It's something we saw here that was so powerful, and it happened there again. There was kind of a magical quality to the way that our players and coaches interacted with their players and coaches and communicated without language. The sites that we visited as well, incredibly memorable and powerful. The trip to Hiroshima really stands out for me as well. We happened to be there just one day after the 70th anniversary of the bombing. And the timing alone was something that was very powerful. But I think whenever we would have been there, would have had the same effect. To be at a place that's so pivotal in human history, and to be there with people who really are our friends now. We had 40 students from Hingham High School. They brought about 20 students from their high school as well, and to be standing shoulder to shoulder with these people who now are really good friends of ours, and to be touched by how far the world has come and how far we've come in the relationship between the United States and Japan it was very moving for me.
So, Kara, any unexpected surprises,
Oh.
glitches in the plan, so to speak?
We'll always expect the unexpected in international travel, right? But I think if not unexpected, I know probably the biggest challenge I think I saw some students encounter, and it was a really interesting thing to see play out over the course of the week. We knew that the students were going to be paired with host families. Logistically, staying with a host family wasn't really practical, you know, given the nature of homes in an urban setting. But they had some day trips, outings with families, and you know, understandably, the students were a little tentative, nervous. There were going to be language barriers, and spending the day with a family that many of whom did not speak English. And they were excited but apprehensive, and they had 2 of those days where they went off with the families. And seeing the transformation the first day when they were very nervous, and then by the end of the second day, hugs and tears, saying goodbye, exchanging gifts and cards. That was so moving to me as an educator, to see students, you know, you want to put them at ease and make them feel better, but knowing they have to push through this challenge. And I think, you know, seeing how nervous they were at first, and then how proud and confident, and what a connection they made at the end with those families. It was such a great trajectory of what we want, how we want kids to grow through global education. That was, if not unexpected, it was definitely one of those challenge areas, a challenge zone during the trip, and the kids just rose to it so splendidly. Yeah.
So, Rick just mentioned no common language, but of course there's the idea that baseball is a universal language. So we know, Frank, how parents and the greater community thinks about baseball, sport in general, I guess, in our country. How do Japanese perceive sport, a high school sport like baseball, is in the life of their students?
Well, in Japan, these high school kids are on their high school team, and that's it. They practice year-round. Coach told me that out of the whole calendar year, like Tennoji High School has 5 days off a year that aren't involved from their high school team, not involving a game or a practice. So, you know, our kids play Hingham High School baseball, then they might play on the summer team, or they play on American Legion team. So their seasons are split, and they'll, you know, sometimes their loyalties are split. In Japan, it's all in for your high school team. It's an amazing thing, and their passion for it, the pace that they go about doing things is incredible. And so we can learn a lot from them. They play the game a little bit differently in some ways, but their passion for it, and practicing with them was, you know, at 8 o'clock in the morning, kind of to beat the heat, was a great experience for all of us, myself included. I couldn't have had a better time doing that.
Right. So, Kara, you're a teacher, obviously, so can you think of some of the highlights of the trip that will impact your teaching?
I mean, I think it's about, you know, always being open to new challenges. I think that's a definite takeaway. You know, not wanting to get too stuck in a rut, and if something seems like a big obstacle, if something seems like a big project, you know, embrace it, and because you just never know what's going to happen from, you know, trying a new experience and reaching out to people, or reaching out to new ideas or concepts. I think, again, you know, trying to communicate with people who their primary language wasn't English was a big challenge for us, and you just have to dive in. You just have to say, you know, I'm going to figure this out. And I think that the success we had in working this exchange, you know, I think it's a great lesson to staff, to teachers, to students, that even if it's a challenge, you know, just keep going, just jump in, say yes, and you know, you may not get the result you're looking for. It's hard to predict the results for projects like this, but that you just sort of have to believe that what you're doing is good, whether that means, you know, whether you're in the classroom with a particular lesson, or if you're looking at innovating curriculum, or, you know, looking for new things to push you professionally. I think this project says, you know, you push yourself and explore new territory, and there'll be rewards. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And as the coordinator of the Global Studies program, which has a certificate component where youngsters have to take additional courses and projects and so on. There's also a club, so many students can share in the activities. So have you had any thoughts about how, having done this trip, that might impact our global studies program? I know one of the challenges in it has been the requirement that there be travel, and so financially is one challenge there. But so thinking about this trip and the planning that went into it and all of that, do you have any thoughts about how we might do things differently in the global studies program?
Well, I think as a result of preparing for this trip, we harnessed a lot of technology, and that's something we do in the Global Citizenship Program to try and to connect kids with the outside world, outside of Hingham and outside of the United States. And being moderately tech savvy myself, I've had to learn a few new tricks, and how to do video conferences and how to connect kids with the world. So there was a lot of preparatory work for this trip. We had a video conference with a hibakusha, which is the term for a survivor of the atomic bombings. And, just on a logistic level, that was new skills I had to acquire and get some tech help from some staff. So I think just harnessing all the resources we have, international travel is great, but realizing that we're lucky to live in a time when, if you seek out other opportunities, whether it's bringing in guest speakers, we had a panel of UN delegates who came to the school to speak about nuclear nonproliferation and the effects of the atomic bomb, thanks to an internship that a recent graduate, Alex Clark, was engaged in. So, this is that, going back to that pushing yourself, like finding out what resources are out there, bringing people to the school, using technology, enhancing technology to connect kids, I think is a great alternative to the travel component.
Virtual travel.
Yeah, virtual travel as much as you can. And then opening yourself up to other programs. For example, we have students from Fuji coming to Hingham High School just for a day. So as a result of this program, other people have heard about this great exchange and said, oh, can we bring our students to your school? They're traveling through Boston. We want to see Hingham High. So we're very popular in Japan, apparently. So we've had kids come from Fuji for a day to see a typical American high school. And so we can bring the world to us. So, this experience has, brought people to us. And I think that's another way to expose them to the world if they're not able to, travel internationally. Yeah.
And those of us who are educators, I think, look at sport as bringing many students some life lessons, and I'm interested in what Frank thinks about the life lessons that this trip have provided for our kids, or this series of activities, not just the trip, but last year's experience too.
Kara has mentioned many of them, to watch the kids, not just the baseball kids, but for me, I had the opportunity to be in amongst all the other kids who I didn't know. I knew some of them a little bit. Just to watch them day in and day out deal with what they had to deal with, to start very early in the morning and go late into the evening. Their attitudes are unbelievable. So the baseball portion is great, and baseball is embedded with all kinds of great lessons because it's full of challenge and failure, and you got to keep on going because tomorrow's another game. It's a beautiful thing about baseball. But just to watch all of the Hingham kids, I couldn't say enough good things about the way they acted day in and day out through really challenging but fun circumstances.
Okay.
And I'd also like to thank these two because they did all the heavy lifting and preparing things and so forth. I'm a lucky guy to go along and chaperone and help take care of the baseball stuff, but it was a great 10 days.
That's terrific. Okay, we're going to take a break for a minute here, and so that we can get the students involved, and we'll be right back. And I know you'll enjoy hearing the student perspective on this. Welcome back, everyone. We're here to continue our discussion about a wonderful experience, an exchange of sorts between Tennoji High School in Japan and Hingham High School. And Rick Swanson is here with me, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the trip. You said 40 students, and then there were how many chaperones?
Right, we had 5 chaperones from Hingham High School, Kara Roth, Coach Frank Niles, myself, and then also 2 other teachers, Erica Pollard and Karen Beatty. that came with us as well. Had a couple of translators with us as well, and there's some terrific staff from a company called Envoys Travel. They're based in Cambridge, and they helped us to plan all of this, and had several of their staff members come with us as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
And so we are fortunate to have two of the students who went on the trip today. I will, here with us today.
Correct.
So I will ask you to introduce them and tell us a little bit about them.
Sure. We had a phenomenal group of 40 Hingham High School students, and I would say I've never been prouder of my connection with Hingham High School than I was during the course of these 10 days, and the energy and spirit of the students who we brought with us, and none of them more impressive than the two we have with us here today. Jared Donchermont, who's a senior, and Jared's going to be a captain for our baseball team in the spring. He's a catcher, also a member of our Global Citizenship Program, as is Teresa Burns, who's also a senior. And Teresa was a host family as well in 2014 when the Tennoji students first came here. So I think they'll bring some great memories and great perspective on this trip.
I'm sure. And we should mention Jared's shirt. Jared, tell us about your shirt.
So, a couple months before the trip, actually it was a couple weeks before the trip, another one of the students going on the trip, Kai Lucier, he was a captain last year. Me and him went to Rockland Athletics, and we had this shirt customized. It says Hingham in Japanese on the front, and then he had this logo made by one of his dad's friends, who I think the guy also designed the Air Jordan logo. And it's the American flag on the top and the Japanese flag on the bottom. And on the back it has our names and numbers. And then we also had hats designed with this writing on the back of the hats and a big H on the front. And as we walked around some of the cities, people would look at us and they'd look at our shirt and say, "Oh, Hingham, Hingham," like they were confused what it
is
meant.
that?
Yeah. And we had to explain, like we didn't speak their language, but we tried to explain. It's our hometown.
So I'm interested in whether or not either of you have traveled internationally before, and if so, where? And so we'll start with you, Teresa.
Yeah, I have. I have a lot, mostly in Asia, because my family actually lived in Hong Kong for 2 years. So I actually had been to Japan before, but it was nothing like this trip. It was just a ski trip in Niseko. So this one was very different than that.
Okay. How about you, Jared?
No, I've never traveled internationally before, so this was
So
incredible.
this is a big trip,
Yeah,
a long
definitely.
trip for a
Yeah.
first trip.
I went to Hawaii my freshman year, and the plane ride seemed pretty tough, but there's nothing compared to the plane ride to Japan.
How long is the actual travel time?
I think 13 hours.
Yeah.
12 or 13.
Did you fly direct?
Yeah.
You did. Oh,
Yeah.
that was fortunate.
Yeah.
13 hours is a long time. 7 or 8 is about my limit
Yeah.
on a plane without changing.
Definitely worth it.
If you were 39 of your best friends, you might not mind the
Well,
13-hour
maybe,
flight.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. So I want to ask each of you, so for each of you personally, what was the best aspect of the trip? It might be what was the most fun or what was the most meaningful, but as you think back on the trip, Teresa, what for you was the most meaningful part of that trip?
My favorite part definitely was the days we spent with our host family. We were each paired up with a student, and I was actually paired up with Masato, who was a student who I hosted. My family hosted 2 years before, so that was definitely my favorite part. They took us out to
So
eat.
you knew him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his but I got to meet the rest of his family, which was very nice. They took us out to eat. We sang karaoke together. It was really fun.
Jared, what about you?
I think just meeting all the new players. Initially, I expected that we'd be playing against the players we played against when they came to our school, but it was different. It was all the new players and the upcoming, I think it was juniors and seniors at Tennoji High School that we played against, and we got to meet all of them, and it was incredible making new relationships and meeting new friends. It was really
How
cool.
big a school is Tennoji, Rick? Yes, our school is 1,250, 60 youngsters, so.
Right. It's also a large school. I don't recall their exact student body. They're over 1,000. It's a large urban school. Osaka is a major city. It's, I think in terms of population, roughly the size of Chicago. And Tennoji is a public high school, but it's sort of a magnet high school. And they draw students from all over the city who go. They've got a terrific academic reputation. Although we know them primarily through their baseball team,
Right.
they are very serious students and take their academics very seriously as well.
So traveling internationally, particularly probably for you, Jared, because you haven't done that before, probably helped you to learn some things about yourself that
Definitely,
you either
yeah.
didn't know you could accomplish or that you were uneasy about. So So what do you think how did this trip change you?
Well, before I went to Japan, I thought that I studied a lot and I practiced baseball a lot, but it's basically nothing compared to how much the students in Tennoji study and how much they play baseball. Like Frank said earlier, they have like 5 days off in the whole year. And it's crazy to see how dedicated they are to their studies and how dedicated they are to baseball. And I think that helped me. You know, I definitely learned a lot from them and learned that I can kind of step it up with my dedication to school and baseball too.
And so have you done that today? In the new
Yeah, I have. Yep.
Teresa?
Well, for me personally, we prepared a lot for the trip with online course and studying about Japan, but I think I learned the most from other students. Actually interacting with them is when I actually learned a lot about their lifestyle and how similar we really are.
Great. So the trip has ended, and have you made commitments to follow up on the friendships?
Yeah, well, there's this app we use. It's called Line, and we can communicate back and forth with the students from Tennoji. So like we type something in to our phones, and then it translates it and sends it to them. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, that's terrific.
Yeah, and then we follow some of them on Instagram. Some people are friends on Facebook, Twitter. We get to talk to them. Sometimes it's good, but it's pretty tough because usually they're awake when we're asleep, and
That's
vice
true,
versa.
because it's
Yeah.
12, 13-hour difference,
I
is
think
it?
so, yeah.
13 hours.
13
Yeah.
hours, yeah.
Yep.
All right. And how about you? So you had 2 experiences with the same individual.
Yeah. Like Jared, I've definitely kept up with both the boys I hosted on social media, and I think we promised before we left, like if they ever come here, we'll definitely contact to meet up again. If I ever go to Japan, I definitely will try to meet up with them.
Right, okay. So we were talking a little bit in the break about, with the prospect of trying to keep up this kind of a relationship, this culture exchange. So Rick, what are your thoughts, initial thoughts, obviously, because you're still recovering from the trip, let alone planning for the future?
It certainly was exhausting, but exhilarating at the same time. And I think we all left with a determination to make this an ongoing relationship. And there were discussions before we had even left about how soon can they come back, and how would we structure the baseball? Would we play a tournament and invite some other teams to come and meet them as well? And so we were really discussing a lot of possibilities, and initially had some expectation that they could even come back as soon as this coming spring. We found that that's really not going to be doable on their end, but
Sure.
we're talking about a return trip of Tennoji players here to Hingham, potentially in the spring of 2017. And if that happens, I would be hopeful that we could return there again, maybe a year and a half later, and I would love to see this be a sustainable project that goes forward and builds on the great start we've had so far.
Right, right. Anything else you'd like to tell us that I haven't asked you about that, the trip?
It was so great getting to know these kids. One thing that was pretty funny was when they came here last year, at first it was pretty hard to connect with them and talk, communicate with them because they spoke a different language. And I remember the first time I met the Tennoji students was at the high school. We were going on a trip to Harvard, to tour Harvard University, and we had to take a bus there. And the bus ride there was pretty uncomfortable, pretty awkward. And the teachers had said, try to communicate with them, try to interact with them, and it was pretty tough because they were nervous, we were nervous. And then I remember at the beginning of the tour when we arrived, one of the students came up to me and felt my beard, and he asked me how old I was, and I said I was 16 at the time, and he was shocked. He was like, "I'm 16 too," and he was shocked.
That was the icebreaker.
Yeah, basically it was the icebreaker. And then I remember the whole day after that was just so much more comfortable and so much more relaxed, and it was just,
Right,
yeah, it
I
was
can
really
see
cool.
where it would be awkward initially.
Yeah,
No one speaks any language.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Teresa?
I would just definitely, if there are any other students watching, recommend any chance they get to travel, especially Hingham High School has so many opportunities. I had such a great experience, so yeah, definitely just encourage everyone else to get involved with stuff like this.
Great. Well, thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
today.
Thank you.
we'll wish you luck in the coming baseball season
Thanks.
next year.
Yep.
And what do you have other activities that you do, Teresa?
I do ballet.
You do
6
ballet?
days a
Oh,
week.
great. Okay. Well, best wishes.
Thank you.
In your senior year, enjoy it.
Thank you
and
very
thank you,
much.
Rick, for coming.
It's been a pleasure.
Terrific experience. I'm really proud of the fact that we have people that work for these things to happen, and we have kids that are terrific who want to participate. So, good news story.
It was a wonderful experience, and you know, my 23 years or so as an educator, I think this might be the highlight. The 10 days that we
So
spent
far.
together. So
So
far,
far.
right? So far, an incredible experience, and really was just so proud of our students and our community too. And I think that our whole town should be very proud of the way they were represented by these 40 young people
Great.
for 10 days on
Great.
the other side of the planet.
Right. Thank you all for watching this episode of Superintendent Spotlight #1, episode 4, the 2015-16 school year. We'll be back not too long a time with our next episode, and that's going to focus on the elementary mathematics program in the Hingham Public Schools, topic of much interest and I think some discussion among parents. So we look forward to sharing what we can tell you about that program.